lab, which would be the second one where we're actually using our drafting tools. Um, Looking at some of the stuff that had been turned in already for. Sorry, I'm pausing for just a second here. Looking at some of the stuff that had already been turned in for Lab 7, or 6 and 7. A couple of things that I want to address as with the class as a whole, and not saying that everybody was having this difficulty, but there were enough from the ones that have been turned in already that I want to talk about it for just a second, and that is no matter what you end up doing for the assignment, you've got to kind of see when it is. How do I want to say this? You got to see when it is done, or at least when it's when you think you're ready to turn it in. You got to ask yourself, does it look like what we're starting from? And that's not really such a big thing for the three view drawings, or at least we'll be doing our first three view drawing today. But from the standpoint of the two drawings that we did with this already, but back when we were looking at Lab 5, when I had you do the isometric view through sketching, a lot of you did a really good job being able to do that. But the problem that I ran into on several of them when they're grading is that you did something, but it very obviously doesn't look like the starting drawing. So you need to get into the mindset that when you're finished with an assignment, you got to go back and look at the source material and say, does this look the same? Because if it doesn't, that's your first clue that probably in the comments when I'm making my grades, there's probably going to be a comment in there somewhere about maybe you should redo this one and resubmit it. Um, and remember, as long as you've turned an assignment in and it's um, traditionally I have it set, or traditionally I've always said that before the due date, but I've extended that a couple of days. What with the situation that we're in now, but as long as it gets turned in a reasonable amount of time, you have unlimited redos if you take advantage of that. But I also have to see that you attempted to the best of your abilities to complete the assignment when you turned it in the first time. So generally, I will. Oh, that's fine, Zach. I haven't even submitted attendance yet, so you're not tardy. We're good. Um, well, literally you are, but anyway, moving on. Um, my train of thought derailed. Uh, Essentially, what I want you to understand is that look at what you're about to submit, check with the source material, and then ask yourself, does this look even remotely like what I am supposed to have been drawing? So, all right, sounds like my worksheet, my paper, has finished printing. So, let me pull that off. So we have. There we go. Go. Got smart. Printed a bunch of them this time around, so I'm not digging around for paper that I can't seem to find anywhere. Go. All right. So those of you who are looking at my screen at the moment, it's probably kind of small, but you should be able to see the assignment that we're going to be working on today, which is one that you have definitely sketched out before. I think I mentioned this originally when we were looking at this assignment the first time, that I tend to use this one as our go-to first assignment. Simply because it's fairly easy and it's one that you've seen before and you'll see it again. You're familiar with it. You should know what it looks like. I don't have it with me at the moment, but you have seen a 3D shape that I could hand to you if we were together that actually looks like this. So it's just kind of a good starting point and typically what I use. Anyway, I think I'm rambling now. Let me click save on that. Who else came in? And okay. Be glad you're not in my classroom at the moment. They're doing work on the ceiling right now, and I think they're pouring tar, or maybe they bumped into an air conditioning unit. It smells very heavily of diesel exhaust and um, like engine grease in here, which isn't a terrible smell, other than that it's a little overpowering and kind of giving me a headache, which is probably not a good thing. But okay, so make sure you have your paper prepared. So remember, you put your T-square, and I did position my camera a little better this time so you can at least see it. Um, Position your T-square so that the uh, head of it is attached to your board nice and tight. Not sure, you can use the left or the right hand side, but just so that it's pressed firmly against the edge. Your paper goes underneath the clear blade on the T-square and rests against the wooden ledge, basically, that's down there. And then smooth the paper out and tape the corners. You can use masking tape. I would recommend masking tape if you have it, or next time you or a parent goes to Walmart, you can pick up a roll for like 89 cents. But I'm not using masking tape today, just because I don't know where my roll is at the moment. But Scotch tape works just fine. It's just a little harder to get off the board um, or your table without tearing the paper, for one. But okay, so we're going to, like I said, take a look at what is Lab 8, this 3-view drawing. Let me drag this over and make it full screen and flip to the desktop. There we go. Zoom in. So like I said, this is a shape that you've seen before. Um, and we're going to start off by drawing the front view of it, then the top view, and then the right hand side. Some features of this, one thing that you guys are not going to have to do today is you won't have to draw the isometric view, nor will you have to do the dimensioning. Although, if you ever do anything extra like that while you are working on an assignment, I will grade that portion of it, but I don't, whoops, I didn't mean to close that. But I won't count you off on it. So I'll make comments or notations on it. But you don't lose points if you do something extra and don't do it perfectly. There we go. That's back now. There we go. Okay. So let's go ahead. It's not on. You don't see it on the screen right now. Oh, I haven't posted it yet. Um, which, come to think of it, would probably be a good thing to do. Just take a second. Okay. Unit 7. Duplicate. Replace. Lab 8. Basic drafting. Update. Edit. So I'm not looking weirdly up to the right. There we go. No, that's a good point. Thanks for mentioning that. I really should have all of these posted before we start the lesson so you can open the file and follow along if you're having a hard time seeing it on my, admittedly little box just below here. Let's see here. This is... Come on. I just need to delete all these lab pages that we aren't going to post. There we go. 8. Upload. today, Junior. There we go. Um, Obviously, if any of you in here are like a junior, as in son of a father who has the same name, I was referring to the computer. Anyway, okay, that's published now. You should see it under Unit 3. It'll probably be at the very bottom of Unit 3. Oh, no, it'll be just right under Unit Lab 07. But anyway, that should be in front of you now if you want to open it to follow along that way. Question to myself, what did I do with the drawing? There we go. Okay, so in order to draw this, we're going to use the same techniques that we did for the last two drawings where we started in the center, except instead of starting in the center of the paper, we're going to use these three plus shapes around the edges. That was another thing that when I was grading the last two labs I noticed is that a few of you were pretty close to being centered, but some of the measurements were slightly off, so you were a little too far down or too far up. It happens, but we want to try and be as centered as possible. One thing about drawing three-view drawings, which is what we're going to do today, is that alignment is very important. So keeping the top view lined up with the front view, lined up with the side view, is basically the only way that dimension, or that when you look at a draw. Okay, let me step back for a second and look at the picture in front of us. So if we look here, you'll see that the front view, right here where my mouse is circling, only has two dimensions on it. It's got the 1.5 inches that tells us how tall it is, and the 1/2 inch that tells us how tall this little ledge is. Now, that's not enough information to actually draw this shape. If we look at the top view, it has a great deal more information on it. It tells us how wide from front to back, or basically how deep the shape is, because remember, this is the top of it. It tells us how wide that little step is, how far the notch over is, how wide the rest of it is. And that information transfers straight down to the front view. So if these things aren't aligned, then you don't really know how far apart this line on the left side is with this one that's more towards the center is. You could measure it, but if I printed this at half scale, then when you go to measure it with your triangle, then you would only find 3/4 inch, even though it tells you it's a whole 1/2 inch, so you'd have to do math to figure that out. It's just easier if we line things up, and I'm going to show you guys how to do that. So, when we are starting a view, a drawing of any type, the first thing you do is find the box that it fits in. In this case, we have a shape that's 1.5 inches tall, and then if we add these two together, we find that the whole shape is 3.5 inches long. So, grabbing my trusty scale and switching back to my drawing view, I have my scale. I have it set so that I'm measuring on the corner that has the 16 in the upper left-hand corner. And 3.5 is my overall length, so I'm going to find half of that. Half of 3.5 is going to be 1 3/4, right? Because half of 3 is 1.5. Half of a half is a quarter. Add them together, you get 1 3/4. So 1 3/4 sits on the vertical line right at the origin of this plus shape that makes up our front view center. I am going to move my T-square so that it's resting against the bottom of my scale. This is just to make sure that the two dots I'm about to make end up in the right place, precisely horizontal from each other. So I'm making a dot at 3.5 and a dot at 0. that measures our side to side, right? Let me zoom in on this a little bit more. It's kind of tricky to do when you can't see myself, or when I can't see my cell phone screen. There we go. So we have one dot here, go 1.3 inches, and we find the center, and go another 1.3 inches, and we find the other dot that I drew. From those dots, I'm going to take one of my triangles. Remember, it doesn't matter which one because we're just using them as a measurement tool at the moment. Okay. Either works. I'm making sure that we're using the side that has the 16 on it. And for this one, the height of our shape is 1.5 inches. So half of that is 3/4, right? Because half of one is a half, half of a quarter, or half is a quarter. Add them together, you get 3/4. Go. So this is my 3/4 mark. In order to combat the problem with that little corner round down here, instead of drawing the line right now, I'm just going to make a mark here at the bottom. And then up here at 1.5 inches, I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. Mark at the bottom, mark at the 1.5 inches. And if I were to connect all of these dots together, I would now have the box that this shape fits in. But I don't want to do that quite yet, only because it's not a complete box. So the rectangle would be kind of have a notch out of it that we'd have to erase. So the first thing I'm going to do then is set my triangle up so I don't have to deal with this bottom curve. I have put my 1-inch mark next to that lower dot we drew in the lower right hand corner. And before I draw my line up, just to save myself some erasing time, I'm going to go ahead and put this measurement right here, this 1/2 inch, because we're drawing this line. If you can see what my cursor is doing on the little image, that line is what we're drawing right now. So I'm going to go from 1 inch to 1 1/2 inches. That can be any measurement on here that you want to use, just as long as you end up with 1/2 inch. Okay. From there, I'm going to connect the bottom lines together, or the bottom dots together. Because looking at the drawing that we're working from, the bottom line is solid. Do the same thing on the left-hand side. And then before I do the top, I'm going to, get my scale out again. Set the 0 mark on that top line dot we made at the top of that line. And looking at the top view up here, I know that from the left-hand edge, or the right-hand edge rather, to this line here is 2 inches. I also know that from here to here is 1.5 inches. And that from here to here is 1.5 inches. That means that this has to be 2 inches, right? So I'm going to make a mark at 2 inches. Get my my scale out of the way. And connect the mark. There we go. To the edge of the line that we've created already. To complete the main outside edges of the shape, we actually don't really even have to do any measuring. You can, but it saves you some if you do measure it, it saves you some erasing. But I'm just going to draw a line that visually, to me, looks like it would line up with this point here. Then I'm just going to use my triangle, pull it down a little bit so I don't have to deal with that curve, and bring it down. So I have that little bit extra where I took my line too far, but that's okay. I can clean that up with my eraser pretty quick. And then finally, there's one thing left to do to finish this shape, which is this line right here. And we can find that real easy. It's 1.5 inches over. We know that from the top view. So 0, and put a mark at 1.5 inches. Get the triangle, and connect them bottom to top. Or top to bottom. Either way, that's all we have to do for this particular shape. Now we do have 2 more to do to finish this. And if you look carefully, the top view is the exact same shape. It's just turned 180 degrees. In order to draw the top, though, there is a lot less measuring that you have to do. And let me show you the easiest way to do this. It accomplishes 2 very important things. First, it makes sure that everything is lined up with the front view properly. And remember, I said that is a very key thing that you have to do when you're making drawings. The other thing that this is going to do for us is make it so we don't have to do most of the measuring that we did to draw this one. So let me show you. We have, I would take your 30, 60, 90 triangle because it's your tallest. Doesn't matter if you have the blue one or the measured one. Make sure that your parallel rule or your T-square is tight against the table or board, whichever you're using. Set it against your square. Pull this down a little bit. And then line up your triangle with the line on the right-hand side. Come up here to the top, and we're going to make a bunch of lines that are longer than we need them, but definitely contain what we need. So we have 1.5 inches. That's how big our top shape is going to be. I'm going to start here and just draw lightly down like that. It is a lot longer than I need. I am positive of that. But I would rather have too much and erase it rather than start with too little and have to figure it out later. And I'm going to do this for all 4 of the vertical lines that make up the front view. So that last line we drew on the front view, it gets transferred up here as well. This line here gets transferred up here. Like that. And like that, I have all of my horizontal measurements for the top view taken care of. All I have to do now is put in my horizontal lines, and there's only 3 of them, in order to finish the shape. Then all I have to do is do some erasing to clean it up. So, I'm going to start on the left-hand side, or the right-hand side, sorry, because that is the one that is the full 1.5 inches. And how I'm going to do this is I'm going to take my triangle. I'm not going to go all the way down to the bottom for a couple of reasons, mostly being, though, because of that broken off corner. So I'm going to take the 3-inch mark, because that's the closest when I started talking, and set it on the horizontal arm of the center mark, that blue thing we created. Once I have it, I'm going to slide my triangle over to the edge without moving my T-square or without pulling the triangle off of the blade. And I need 1.5 inches, right? So, here, you know what? Let's not use 3. This would be a little more... Here, let's do this. I'm going to move my T-square up just a hair, so that 2 3/4 is sitting on that center mark. And the reason for that is that 3/4 of an inch is half of an inch and a half. I'm going to start at 2 and make a mark. And then I'm going to make a mark up here at 3.5 because that gives me my inch and a half. And then I'm going to darken the space in between them in so I can very clearly see where that side of my shape is. And then I have one more measurement that I need to take care of. So keeping my 2 3/4 of an inch mark on the horizontal arm, I'm going to come over here and I'm going to make a mark at 3 inches and at 3.5 inches. So remember, 3.5, when nothing has moved, is the top of my shape. The reason I made a mark at 3 inches is because if we look at our drawing here, this little ledge, or the line on the farthest left side, is only 1/2 of an inch, and that's what we just found. So I'm going to go ahead and darken that 1/2 of an inch in between 3 and 3.5. And at that point, all that's left to do for this shape is to connect lines. So looking at our top view, if I start at that dot we made on the left and carry all the way over to the dot we made on the right and make that nice and dark, we have the top line. Starting at the bottom of the shape over here on the right, I'm going to come over and cross both of these lines until I find the second line over from the left, right there. And finally, the bottom of that 1/2 inch line, I'm going to carry it over to that same second line from the left. Just like that, there's some extra stuff to erase, but our whole shape is there. All we have to do to finish it now is just darken in the rest of the lines that we want to keep and erase the ones that we don't. There we go. After you've darkened it in, you can kind of see it a little better. Remember to use your erasing shield when you go about cleaning this up. Oops. Clean. And remember, I don't have an erasing shield, which is why this is a do as I say, not as I do instance. One of these days, maybe today actually, I will get over to Blick and pick up some supplies that I am currently lacking. Go. Alright, and that's the top shape. And we're going to use a very similar technique to do the right hand shape. Okay? So let's just kind of burn through it quickly. I set up my T-square, so it's even with the bottom of my front view. Carry a line over. Excuse me. Set it up so I'm aligned with the top of this ledge. And then the actual top of my front view. Okay. Same deal. Take my scale. Find a measurement that's easy to use here. So we have 1.5 inches width. And if you're wondering how I know that, it's because if we look at our 3-view drawings here, and we'll talk about this a little more in detail later, but this shape here, the right-hand side, its height is the same as the height of this shape. But its width, okay, from side to side, and this is where it confuses some people, is the same as the height or the front to back of the top view. Okay? And when we talk about this a little bit more and look at how to pull these measurements together in your own head, then I'll give you some better descriptions visually of how this works. But for now, all you need to know is that when it says a vertical measurement on the top view, it's referring to the horizontal measurement on the right side view. And I hope I didn't just make that even more confusing, but we'll go for it for the moment. There we go. Okay, so as of right now, we have all of our vertical measurements taken care of, but we need to know how wide things are. So we look at the top view and we know that our shape is 1.5 inches wide. I'm going to set 3/4, just like we did for the height over here, on our vertical mark of the center view, or the right center icon, I guess is a word for it. And I'm going to make a mark at 0. And I'm going to make a mark at 1.5. And while I'm here, I'm going to go ahead and make a mark at 1. And the mark at 1 is for the hidden line. And a hidden line, if you don't remember, is the blue dashed line that we see on the right side view. It's the only hidden line in this whole drawing. So having that done, this one's pretty simple. All we need to do is take a straight edge, any straight edge, so any side of the triangle but the hypotenuse, and connect the top line to the bottom, except for the one that's going to be our hidden line. And I'll tell you why in just a second. So we have all of the hard shapes drawn, not hard, but all of the solid shapes, the object lines done. Now here's what you guys are going to do, and you need to pay attention to this part in order to get it right. We're going to draw this vertical line here that makes up the hidden line, but you cannot press hard. It has to be a light line, and I'm going to show you why in just a second, or I'm going to tell you why. So you draw a light line, okay? And now you're going to take your erasing shield, and we're going to use some of those holes that are in the middle of your erasing shield. Here. Let me find a good picture of it since I don't have one to show you. Bills from the days when Google would give you the size of an image when you searched it. There we go. Alright, so if we look at the desktop, so this is your erasing shield. What you guys are going to do is you are going to cover the hidden line that we just drew with these dots, okay? Now bear with me for a second. So when you do this, your hidden line should be visible through the holes. Once you have that, hold it in place, take your eraser, and erase through the holes so that the line below it goes away where the dots are. And would probably be much better if I had something to actually show you this. But unfortunately, like I said, I don't. So you are going to hold the erasing shield over the hidden line so that it covers the hidden line except through the dots. Then you'll erase through the dots and you will be left with a dashed line that is perfectly spaced, essentially. And once you do that, you're finished. All you have to do is finish cleaning up the rest of the erasing bits. But other than that, this drawing is completed. So let me clean this up, even though I can't do the hidden line like you guys are. Typically, when we're in the classroom and I've given you guys all the pencils to go with the drafting kit, then you would draw hidden lines in blue lead, simply because that's just the standard for this. Blue is the standard for hidden lines. Alright, so do your best to clean up your lines enough that they don't really show up a whole lot when you scan it to turn it in. You just want it to be as neat and tidy as you can get it. But after that, just make sure you name it right. So, first initial, last name. This is Lab 8, even though the title says still 6 and 7 because I forgot to change it. Today's date is the 15th, I believe. So 10, 15, 20. And our scale is 1 to 1. All right. Um, so that's basically going to be it for today. We've only got about 6 minutes left. There is, give you a quick preview of what's to come next week. Do have another couple of labs in this vein that we're going to do. So have your paper ready for that. But we also need to, we're going to work on updating our portfolio that we started to make. And there was one other thing that I wanted us to do. And it slipped my mind, but it's in my notes somewhere. But so the main thing that we're going to do is we got another lab. We're going to work on updating your portfolio. And we're going to take a look at measurement as more than just here's what you pick out on your scale. So that's just kind of a preview for next week. But other than that, if you don't have any questions, you guys have a good day. Enjoy the rest of your Thursday and the weekend that follows it. And we'll talk to you on Monday.